right, welcome back, everyone, to the morning run. I hope you're all doing great today. The thing is here, it's been a while. I just wanted to start off with saying that, we're sorry. We're sorry it took some time to get the episode out here, but we're back. We're back. We had some things. A lot of stuff had taken place, and a lot of, a lot of things in baseball have taken place. A lot of drama. We weren't able to fully get it all in. So now we're here today. We're here to talk about two big things, and if we can get to anything else, we'll talk about it. But basically, the baseball world has been shocked by an epidemic, a pandemic that we have not seen before, or have we? Everyone's arm is falling off. Tyler, what's up? How are you doing? What are your thoughts on all this?
I'm doing good, Victor. Obviously, the baseball season is off to a great start, so there's that. But
Yes.
to talk about the elephant in the room with elbows and UCLs, because I do want to clarify. It's easy. We're running away with this a lot, and I'm not saying there's nothing to this, but not everyone is out with a torn UCL. It's elbow inflammation, elbow soreness, like a lot of these guys. So I like to say elbow, just epidemic with all the elbow crap. It's definitely alarming for sure. Mainly because you look at the players getting hurt, and it seems to be a type of player, not similarity style, but maybe guys that pop up in certain stat categories towards the top, like maybe average fastball velocity. We look at the list of those guys from last year and how many of them have compromised elbows at the moment. Definitely something to take note about. Really big thing, and we could probably discuss more of why we think that, but you can't deny the trend anymore in terms of saying, oh, yep, a lot of Tommy John, just it happens in the game. Like, this is clearly some type of uptick towards a certain type of starter and the way they pitch that's affecting them. So
Yeah, there's two main schools of thought I've seen so far. People are blaming the pitch clock and the new rules, and the dramatic shift to the new rules and no real leeway in anything. And then the other thing is also going back to the sticky stuff too. That also dramatic shift in how they handled that too. And then the other thing is people are also saying it's because we've prioritized velocity like never before in this game. Tyler, what do you think is the answer? Because for me, I think it's a velocity thing. I think more than it, I think it's a lot of things. But I think the big overall thing is people are prioritizing velocity, and not that every person themselves can't want to throw hard, but it's this this obsessiveness with it that I think is leading people down paths that are really hurting people. But yeah, what's your opinion really so far on what you think it is?
yeah, I think there's a pretty clear trend, not even necessarily with just throwing harder. I think if we look at the players getting hurt, you mentioned the spin rate and all that type of sticky stuff going into it. It's not the sticky stuff to blame. I think it's more the spin rate. Now, spin rate, obviously, with a fastball, it's going to make it run more. It is going to add more miles per hour to it. But a spin rate in terms of the curveball, it's not necessarily, and the slider, all these other pitches, not necessarily adding more miles per hour, trying to add more break and stuff to that. And we see how important that is for pitchers with those sliders, those off-speed pitches, to get that heavy spin on those pitches. And obviously, whether you're throwing a fastball, a curveball, whatever, I think doing that everything you can to try and get that max effort from it, whatever it be, the spin, the velocity, all that, it's going to come and hurt these guys' arms. I think we saw in the era of the sticky stuff, the max rise, a complete straight line almost of the way spin rate rose from what it used to be to what it is now and where the pitchers were. And it has come down, but it was not at the level where it was prior to that. Like, teams and players are still prioritizing that type of pitching. And that type of pitching is leading, I think, to the most of the injuries here. Obviously, we go about what spin rate is. I think when it comes to fastball, you're trying to throw it harder. So those two coincide pretty well in the grand scheme of things. Like velocity, spin rate, I think they're very connected.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's a variety of things, and you made a good point, because the way I see it is, these pitchers are using sticky stuff, a variety of different kinds of different things different techniques to increase spin rate, at this point in time. So they are trying to do this. Why? Because up to this point, their body has reached the max ability it can format. So they need to do something that is within the rules to get that extra bit of competitiveness that their normal natural body, as good as it is, cannot give to them, right? So the way I see to this is, sure, you may be able to achieve that, but the risk you're running is that your body was not able to do this naturally before. So you're putting yourself in a risk that your body's not going to be able to handle the constant extra pressure, the constant extra stress, especially on such a concentrated part of your body, like the elbow, that arm area, that region, also your shoulder. That's also a very common injury for pitchers. But it's to me, it's playing with fire. You bring up a great point, and that's why I think players know that, which is why when they crack down on it so sharply, players that got hurt initially were quick to blame that, and people in general were quick to say, hey, you're playing with fire again, to use that expression again, with our careers here, just telling us, our bodies are not prepared for this quick drop off. Now things have kind of medianed out a bit, but the thing I wanted to hit on that I brought up about this obsession about velocity is because of a few things that excuse me, that I heard that kind of confirmed a lot of things that I've noticed over the years. Me and Tyler are huge baseball fans our whole life. We met as kids, and we've continued to have this love for the game. But the two of us were never good enough to play like travel baseball and all this stuff. So maybe I didn't notice this early enough. I don't know, or maybe it's always been this way. But from what I've seen through social media and the years, and sort of being in this area where a lot of those perfect game athletes are now in the majors, and or in the minors, knocking on the door of the majors, and these very talented kids that have all been through these showcasing sort of lives through baseball. I think this puts them in a hyper competitive environment that prioritizes things that are silly to prioritize at younger ages, when your body is not fully formed and fully capable of certain things. And I think that obsession leads to unneeded stress early on when you're a child, and then when you become an adult and you can really let it rip and really throw, your body's already kind of damaged from all those early years of obsessing about throwing hard when you're like 15, 16, hitting 80, maybe even 90 miles an hour at that point. Like your elbow's not able to handle that despite being able to do it. The man, I forget his name, maybe you can pull it up for me later, or I'll do it later before we end this topic. He kind of pioneered the whole surgery. He says that the elbow itself, the ulnar collateral ligament, is not fully mature till you're 26. So the fact that, you have teenagers that are just a few years removed from being like 10 years old are able to reach certain levels of mile per hour, that's like, almost unheard of. I think, even though in the moment it may seem cool and doesn't seem detrimental, I think it does have an effect as the years go on. And what really made me think that this is a big reason is because Justin Verlander, who is currently rehabbing, and he's a great example of a guy that's still able to throw hard despite being so old, and obsessing about spin rate, and that being the reason for why he's able to do that. And he said himself kind of the same thing. And he said, for him as an example, he's a once in a generation type player, and he didn't start throwing 90 miles an hour until he was in college. So, the talent doesn't necessarily need to be there when you're 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. You should focus on baseball and focus on just being a good overall player and keeping your body strong and healthy. A lot of these athletes in baseball and in general played multiple sports, and I think we've shifted away from that in all sports. Basketball has this whole AAU program. Baseball within itself specializes. If you throw hard, you're a pitcher. If you don't do that, you're this, you're that. I think it's all piling up, and it's a bunch of things, but overall, it's this velocity obsession, and I think it ties into what you said with the spin rate as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do definitely think that's totally fair point. Everything there. Especially like the way we go ahead and not necessarily coach, but maybe don't coach players in terms of the way that we should, in keeping them healthy and preparing them for everything beyond.
Well, when you were growing up, right? When you were growing
Mhm.
up, did you ever hear the expression in Little League and whatever, like people did not want you throwing anything close to a curveball because it was going to mess up your arm? Like that was like a known thing. I remember that.
When I was in like in-house, like if you know what that term means, like in-house, just like neighborhood league,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they wouldn't want us throwing curveballs. But once I started playing travel, and I played travel, I think end of elementary school, I might have
Hmm.
started. They didn't if you could throw a curveball appropriately, they would encourage you to throw a curveball.
See, that's the thing. I was always taught. I remember vividly once being at like a baseball tournament and I just happened to become friends with some kid and we were having a catch and stuff and I didn't know how to throw a curveball, but I knew how to grip a curveball. And we were just talking about the grip and I was just saying to him like, yeah, like I can't do it, but this is how you're supposed to hold it. And like apparently you're supposed to like flick the wrist some way. And like we were just having a conversation. Like I wasn't even trying to like tell him this is what you should do, right? And his father like overheard this and he was like, "What the hell do you think you like?" He was pissed at me. He was like, "You're trying to get him to throw this. You don't you know what that's gonna do to your arm if you're not careful with that? You're just a kid. You're not supposed to be telling." I was like, "Dude," I was like freaked out. It was crazy, you know. And I think like stuff like that is just completely thrown by the wayside. And I think there is something to it though. Not that that's the exact
Hmm.
reason, but you know
Yeah,
what I mean. You know what I'm
yeah, for
trying to say?
sure. Quick moving, trying to direct it back a little bit on the MLB,
Oh yeah, of course, of
specifically, and
course.
some information that I've been gathering throughout the podcast. Really looking at fastball velocity, and you can definitely see um, when that sticky stuff comes in.
Hmm.
Um, a lot more pitchers are hitting that 97 mark. Like right now, I'm just looking at fastball velocities, splitting individual seasons from 2008 to 2016, and there were four total pitchers that threw 97 over 97, and
Okay.
that number now is higher. Obviously, we're going up, and I do want to also point out though some of these names that are above 96 miles an hour on their average velocity throughout this time period. Because 96, if you're throwing 96 average fastball velocity in 2024, you're still high up. You're still one of the higher velocity pitchers. But look at some of these guys. Noah Syndergaard, devastated with injuries. Carlos Martinez, devastated with injuries. Giordano Ventura, devastated with injuries before, obviously,
Hmm.
tragedy. Matt Harvey, devastated with injuries. Nathan Evaldi, dealt with multiple Tommy Johns.
Yeah.
Matt Harvey, injuries. Ubaldo Jimenez, dealing with injuries. Justin Verlander, we know about his Tommy John. Chris Archer, dealing with a lot of different injuries throughout his
Hmm.
career that really devastated him after he left Tampa. And Steven Strasburg, we know the long list of injuries that have come with him. These are pretty much it in terms of the guys that have been throwing above 96 miles an hour. I would say the lucky ones that survived are Felix Hernandez and Garrett Cole. That seems to be about it in
Yeah, but I
this
think
in this
even Felix
range.
Hernandez, like he had his own kind of
His
troubles
his
as
fall
well.
off was pretty steep in
Yeah, that's
terms
what I
of
mean. Like I think there is something to say. And you know, maybe it is that these pitchers have to well, like I said, I think people have to grow into it a little bit more. Like when you think of someone I think of CC Sabathia, right? He was very, very healthy, but he had, like we just mentioned about Felix Hernandez, a drop off in velocity. A lot of it he attributes it to the fact that he lost weight and he pitched in a way that drove his momentum through his weight. And you know, that might be true, but he was able to reinvent himself is my point. And maybe we have to, you know, I think we have to teach people, general pitchers in general, from the youth level to the major league level, again, a little bit about just using everything in your arsenal. You know, pitchers back in the day, even though they were known for throwing hard, they didn't throw as hard as they could every single pitch. It was used as a, you know, something in their arsenal. And yeah, people used it varying, like, you know, maybe Nolan Ryan always threw hard, but that was like naturally what he could do. And then, you know, we don't have this data on people like this, like Nolan Ryan, Bob Gibson, those kind of guys are always like the example. Like those guys always threw hard. Yeah, but we don't know at what age that they started throwing hard, really. Like we're talking about the 50s, the 60s, you know. We don't have perfect game data and stuff like that. Like we have it now for these players, and we don't know necessarily if that's good or not that they're throwing that hard this early. And one last point I want to make before we move on to the next topic, I guess, is that maybe in Japan, they're already thinking about this with their next brightest star, Roki Sasaki, who is going to be, I don't know if he's going to be posted next year or the year after, but he's their young, bright pitching star phenom that's over there, supposedly supposed to be better than Yamamoto, who just signed a pitching record deal despite never throwing an MLB pitch. When the Dodgers brought him over this offseason. So Sasaki's younger, he throws harder. He's constantly throwing 99 miles an hour and everything. And last year he pitched almost a full season. I think he threw maybe 130 innings, maybe a little less than that. But he dealt with some injuries, some elbow injuries and stuff. And when he came back for the playoffs, he was able to pitch in the playoffs and he pitched very well. His team did not win it all, though, so it was a premature exit. Now, he has now come into the season, and his velocity for his pitches in his first 3 starts for his fastball has fluctuated between 92 to 99. It is sitting around 95, where it sat around 97, I think it was last year. So the average velocity has come down, but they're noticing he's still getting up to 99. He can still do it, but he's pitching throughout 92 to 99. And so far he's 3 starts in. The Marines, the team he plays for, they're fully, pitching him like he's healthy. He seems healthy. To me, that tells me that maybe they're considering, his elbow management of how he pitches through games to keep him healthy through a full season because he's very young. He's set to come to the MLB very soon, and he has yet to really pitch a full season like of 150 plus innings. Some of that's due to the pandemic too, but maybe this is them taking that into consideration. They don't want themselves to have a guy this talented have to have Tommy John before he signs an MLB contract because the way the posting system is set up, MLB teams have to give the Japanese team like actual upfront money to have the opportunity to sign this guy, whether he signs or not. That money still goes to the team. So that's a big incentive to keep this guy healthy. Do you have any final thoughts on the whole thing before we move on?
I don't think so. I just think it's a fascinating topic that we're only going to be able to answer with more time. We're still so early in this season and this development of this stuff. I think, obviously, pinpointing what specifically it is nearly impossible. We can obviously take our guesses and use data and research and information we have. But I'm honestly a little alarmed, though, can't lie, because it's seemingly increasing day by day almost that one of these guys is hitting the IL with something on with their elbow.
And now the other elephant in the room we have to talk about, because we talked about it a little bit last episode, but that was like as it happened, knee jerk and everything. The Ohtani, the full complaint, the whole thing has come out about Ippei Mitsuhara versus the United States. It's pretty crazy. I read the whole thing. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the whole thing now that the whole thing has come out? I'm pretty floored with like just everything, honestly, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think from what we've talked about, not on the podcast, we might have some disagreement here, but it is what it is, Victor. Because I don't know, I'm pretty sussed out by all this. I'm not necessarily buying what we're being sold. I did read the document, and I'm just saying there's some things that I'm a little confused by.
Okay, then I guess I'll have you take the lead on it. So you tell me what you're confused about, but before you do, I would just like to say I would be willing to agree with you, except for the fact I'm failing to see where Ohtani has the motive to be involved. But you tell me where you're confused, and we can go from there.
Sure. I think motive is not always something necessarily that can be found. A lot of times we see people, I just want to clarify, I'm not saying Ohtani is guilty of anything or is comparable to these people, but we've seen people get convicted of murder without necessarily understanding a motive. Sometimes the motive isn't always clear. I think some of the questionable parts was how compliant it all seemed to be, how easy it seemed to be for this guy to do a lot of this stuff, just kind of without Ohtani knowing, just that, but also some specific conversations that he had with the bookie, and how the bookie says, "Yeah, I understand this is a cover up," and then his response seems like something that Chat GPT would say back to him in response to that. So that part to me, I think, was the biggest red flag, and I'll find that right now if you want to say anything while I'm looking
No,
around.
I know the text. He goes, he goes, I know it's just the story is bullshit and it's all a cover up. I know, ha ha ha. I know you're not actually stealing from the guy. And then he goes, technically, I am stealing. It's over for me. I mean, like, I don't see why that's like such a crazy response. Like, the guy's like, the guy's being indicted for money laundering. I don't think he's going to be thinking too hard about what he's typing in a text message to the guy that's involved in it with him. Like, it's like, I don't know. Okay. So the thing is here is that it is pretty unbelievable. You're right, totally is that Ippei was able to have this sort of access. Now, the thing is though, is that like in the complaint, I'm sure you saw, it talks about that when Otani first comes to America, he knows no English, and Ippei is the only way Otani is able to communicate with anyone that's speaks English. Now, what this then shows you is that that's Ippei is who he uses to communicate with his agent, his financial advisors, and to open up the bank for this, the account in the bank that this happened. And then you see in that meeting that he was, then you see in this meeting that he was there while they're discussing privileged information, talking back and forth through this, the banking officials. Now, the thing here is, though, I don't find this so much unbelievable as I find it that it's uh just failure on the part of the people working for Otani. The other thing is that I don't know if you know this, but it's generally known that Otani, when he was in Japan, his mother was handling his financial his financial everything. He was given like an allowance per month. I think it was like $1,000 American, the equivalent to $1,000 a month. And then when he was done with his time in Japan, he had money left over from all that. So, Otani, and then before that, he was a high school student and a kid, like, and all he was doing was playing baseball. So the thing is that like I can totally see why it's unbelievable for someone to have this kind of oversight, but at the same time, Otani just spent his whole life just obsessing about being able to be a pitcher and a hitter in baseball, and he was able to do that. And then when he was in Japan doing that, he wasn't handling his own financial affairs. And doesn't speak English, comes over here, is using the guy who's also employed as his manager, to talk about privileged information. Like, yeah, that's a big oversight, but especially within like the Japanese community, which very much values like their own people. I don't mean like Japanese people. I mean like, your friends and your family. You really value all that. And I'm sure Otani trusted him a lot more than a lot of people would trust their own friends, like in American society. And I think that has something to boil down to. I think it's very complicated. Um, Now, I do think Otani is the victim here, but I think the people to blame is not just Ippei, but it's also these people that Otani had employed because they didn't seem, on one hand, yeah, like why would you have a reason to distrust the translator? But at the same time, no, you as like as your financial advisor, like for Otani, they said like, yeah, we asked a few times, but we never got it handed over. Well, no, like you should have to get your own Japanese speaking person for your own company to contact Otani directly. Like this is crazy. Like there were so many red flags on the side of the people working for Otani, and I think that's what's being lost in all this. That those people are probably going to get fired when this is all said and done if they haven't already. I haven't really looked into what he's done. But like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't see it so much as unrealistic. I see it as that it's very realistic, and that people like this, who handle so much big business and so much money in general, were very cocky, getting another big client, and they oversaw a lot of things. And because of that, this guy who had a gambling addiction was able to pinpoint exactly how he was able to get things going. Because the thing is people are going to the fact that he impersonated Otani. It's not that like he put on a voice. No, no one knows how Otani sounds speaking English, A, and also, for the most part, and also like a random bank teller that's answering the phone is not necessarily going to even know baseball. Like it's a lot of things have to take place, and I'm sure those security questions that he knew. I'm sure these are things that he knew. He's known Ohtani for more than 16 years or something like that. Like it's a really unfortunate thing to happen. He stole like $16 million, something like that. It's a crazy thing. Do you think anything's gonna happen to him though? Because like a lot of times we see stuff like this go
Well,
away
yeah, he's gonna go
quietly.
to jail for a while.
You okay?
That's
Okay.
how that
I'm
works.
glad you think so. I'm glad you
I mean,
think
yeah,
so.
that's how it works because it's fraud. It's all that money,
No, yeah,
and
I know.
because I mean, well, technically he lost so much money
Yeah, he
where
lost
he
like
wouldn't have to
40
pay
million
anything in
dollars.
taxes, but it's the idea that you're avoiding in taxes through offshore
Mm-hmm.
betting. And then
Mm-hmm.
like the bookie is the one that is really, really screwed in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
like the clientele and everything going on there. Um, I still think that the fact originally Otani said he gave him some money is really puzzling. And it just leads to questions of, well, what did not Otani betting per se? What did Otani know? What is he? Was he actually just unaware of the situation, or was he aware of the situation and just didn't really like? That's his friend. He wants to help him out. Something along those lines. I really feel that this is a little confusing. Going along with the fact that Otani initially said something totally different, and no one seems to be ever mentioning that ever again. I understand people can say things that aren't true, but an initial statement like that in response to allegations to me is very telling that just 1 hour later, we're getting a completely different story.
Yeah, no, I think his PR team at this point is famously not that great. He's very secretive and we don't know much about him and other than what he allows to be put out there. And the thing is that that is definitely a weird thing that they weren't on top of the situation, but I don't think they knew on the onset what happened because even in the report it says that like apparently the first time he's notified is after Ippei addresses the media. So when he addresses the media, Otani doesn't even know what he's saying, which is pretty crazy. And I don't know. It's just to me, yeah. Well, he turned over his phone and all his electronics. It says in the report, right? He turns over everything, and I understand. Yes, you can get rid of things, but it's the FBI. They're going through things, and they went through all the text messages that he's had with Ippei on both phones. They, recovered all sorts of data that, may or may not have been there and all this stuff and they went through it all and I'm sure like this whole thing is not to get Otani, right? It's they just are uncovering an illegal betting ring and Ippei happens to be involved. But if Otani happens to be involved too, I don't think they'd hold any qualms about getting them involved. Like this is the FBI. At the end of the day, I don't think they really care what happens to the image of baseball. Um, and like five people being involved in total, like you know what I mean? Like I don't see the motive or the reason to cover Otani up in this. And also the fact that he didn't even bet on baseball. Like none of the bets recovered were anything around baseball. So it's not even, like a violation, I think, of, obviously it would be a crime to use an illegal betting site, but like
Yeah,
the
every
implication of
single
like,
league has completely different rules. Like, I think NBA, you just can't have accounts.
okay.
NFL, you can't bet on anything if you're in team premises, but if you're not on team premises, you're allowed to bet on other sports and stuff.
Hmm.
And also, I mean, a big thing that comes into this individually is there's a lot of teams that have their own rules in their contracts with their players because, well, MSG, for example, owns the Knicks, but they also own the Rangers. People on the
Hmm.
Knicks aren't allowed to bet on anything related to Rangers. If you're an employee of MSG, if you're an employee of the Knicks, so there's a ton of teams like that. How many owners are owners of multiple teams? So so many specifics into what is and isn't allowed. If Otani isn't betting on baseball, I believe he's allowed. I don't know the specific rules with
Well, the other
MLB.
thing is that they looked into both players' people's names and they saw that Ippei had like three sportsbooks accounts open, like legal sportsbooks accounts, and Otani just had nothing related to betting whatsoever. So like, there's a precedent for Ippei. There's not one for Otani.
How do
It's
you have three accounts? Like, I thought you could only have one of those things.
no.
Or does it mean like different books?
Yeah, like he's got one account with MGM, one with
One
DraftKings, one
with
with
yeah, okay.
FanDuel.
Because like I'm like, bro, every time because like I used to have an account for just the play like the fantasy games before it was legal betting.
Mhm.
And then when it was legal betting,
Oh, it messed you up, right? When you
well,
had
what
legal
happened
betting.
originally, I was like, I didn't realize that I put my old email from when I was just playing the games. And I try to put my new email and they're like, oh, this is you can't have two accounts. So I'm still on that old email for this one, but yeah, definitely question there. But I assume yeah, other books and all that. Bet Rivers, probably big Bet Rivers guy.
Pat Rivers. Well, yeah. So to just put a bow on the whole thing, Ippei's facing, I think, up to 30 years in prison for the initial charges that are coming out now. I think it's already starting, like the proceedings or something. I saw he turned himself into the police. I just feel bad for his family. He's got like two little kids, I think. He's married. Like this is not activity you as a married man should really be getting into like that deep. Like it's just crazy. It's crazy. Like that's not like, yes, it's bad to steal from your friend and all that money and stuff, but on a deeper level, like, should have been thinking about his family there and really what all the implications of all this stuff is. It's really, really just reckless and terrible.
I mean, it truly is borderline impressive that the guy never bet, I believe, never bet a six-figure bet, and he lost $16 million. None of his bets, like no big bet, just all straight grind losses. Continuously losing. It wasn't like crap, bro. I was on a roll, and then I put a milli on a team and lost so much. Like, nope, just so bad. So honestly, borderline respectful. I wonder what if you obviously I don't know all the details. Maybe eventually it'll all come out about what his bets were, but wonder what your record would be if you tailed his bets the opposite way, didn't go with him and kind of shaded his bets.
Well, what would also be really funny, which is coming out now on the other side of the thing, it showed that he also just used the money to buy baseball cards and stuff. When people were popping up all like evidence and stuff, and I saw one thing that was funny was a picture of Ippei, Ohtani, and Trout after the WBC, and it's all three of them holding a card of they all autograph. Well, he didn't autograph, but Ohtani and Trout autographed, and Ippei's there. And it's funny in the moment. I remember being like, why is Ippei there with his own card? Like he's just a translator. Like it doesn't. I mean, I guess if he got the cards, like whatever. But like in that moment, like that's evidence like of him using stolen and he's
Mm-hmm.
probably profiting. But the point I wanted to make is that some guy on Twitter posted about how he sold cards to Ippei because the alias that he was using came out and he was like, hey, I probably sold him cards. So I wonder if people are going to be like, yo, I made the bet like the opposite way. I won money on that. I'm better than Ippei. Like, you know what I mean? Like when if they do use it as evidence in the courtroom to show
Yeah,
all the transactions that he
I
made.
got a bit of a funny story off that. Tell you
Hmm.
about what happened to me, just experience I had. Um, and then probably we'll have to wrap up. But um, so one of the job I work delivering pizzas occasionally. One of the coworkers there, delivery, big baseball guy, big card
Mm,
collector,
okay.
and he's told me countless times about all the cards. So when that news came out about like that guy specifically, you mentioned like I'm pretty sure I was like selling to eBay and like getting outbid by eBay at times. Like I immediately thought of this kid. So when I was working this past week, I was like, "Yo, do you think you got outbid by eBay?" And then he goes, "Wait, that was you who took my Wyatt Langford card?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" Because he knows like I like Wyatt Langford. We've talked about that before. And he didn't hear like Ippei. He just thought like I was saying like, oh, like making like, oh, I see you got outbid on your card like recently. So he was like, bro, you bid that card away from me. You so lucky. I can't believe it. I was like, no, Ippei. Remember the gambling? He's like, oh yeah, what about it? I'm like, he was buying baseball cards, like OD, like, and I know how much you grind on it. Like, he literally tells me he buys like cards almost every single day, like buying cards. I'm like, you definitely were getting outbid by eBay. He's like, oh my god, I definitely did. You know his name? And then he was like checking out like in the back of the just like trying to see on Twitter if he could find that tweeting that information. It was very funny. I was like, no, I did not take your Wyatt Langford card, buddy. I'm sorry. But
I think he probably did get outbid by Ippei multiple times because what's it called? He was using Whatnot to buy cards, and isn't that the big like you can stream on it and people can live bet on it and stuff for that. I've seen like ads for it. That's pretty funny though. I think we'll move into our final thoughts. As you said, we should be heading out of here. We've had a nice conversation about two very ominous things. So I wanted to end with a question for you. This is something I have going to turn into a bigger segment next week, but I have just noticed Tyler O'Neill is off to a hot start. And, when he was traded from the Cardinals to the Red Sox, it was relatively untalked about. Tyler, you're a diehard Cardinals fan. What are your thoughts now that he is fully a Red Sox? He's off to the start. Like, do you think this was an abysmal thing to do? Because obviously the Cardinals are not off to they're not earth-shattering start or anything, and they could probably use some outfield. Okay, you're showing
that's
me.
That's not Tyler O'Neill. That's Jordan Hicks, by the way. I'm showing a Jordan Hicks baseball savant page to Victor.
Oh.
Yeah, it's happening again. In multiple ways. Tyler O'Neill gonna have a 40 home run season.
Jordan Hicks gonna win the Cy Young.
No, not that much. But like he's gonna beat Jordan Hicks is balling out this
All-star.
year. It's just more add them to the list, baby. They keep coming bigger and better than ever. Let's go.
So I guess that'll be my final question too. Why did the Cardinals never make Jordan Hicks a starter?
Oh, we did last year. We tried to do that. It was terrible. It didn't work at all. I was at a game that he pitched versus the Mets, and he walked the bases loaded to start the game.
Huh. Interesting. Well, good for the Giants. At least one thing's going right for them.
Wait,
Matt,
I don't know if that was last year or the year before. They tried him as a starter at some point. I know we joked about it on this podcast because we were like, this ain't going to work. No, on the Cardinals.
Oh, yeah. I think you're right. You're right. I do remember that. Well, things are off to an interesting start. I just wanted to talk about Tyler O'Neill a bit because you're an actual Cardinals fan, and I think that seems to be the trend. They get rid of guys instead of like trying it for one more year, and then they go to a team and they get great. Randy Arozarena is obviously the big case. Sandy Alcantara, another thing, a prospect they gave up on too early. Anyway, I didn't want to end with trashing on the Cardinals. I just wanted to ask you about that. Guys, thank you very much for listening. It's been a dramatic last couple weeks of the season. We wanted to get together and talk about it all tonight. Hopefully next week when we get together, or whenever the next episode is, it'll be much more positive news and, just general baseball talk. Thank you guys for listening to The Morning Run. Please like and subscribe and share on every platform we're available. We will see you guys next week.